Before he quit, a ranger named David left a note pinned to the inside of the door at Fire Lookout 42. Not a letter, not a report, a list of rules. The next ranger who found it laughed at it, threw it in the trash. That ranger lasted 4 days before he was airlifted out, non-responsive, clutching an empty flare gun. This is what the rules said, and this is what happens when you don't follow them. Fire Lookout 42 sits 6 miles off the nearest access road in Blackwood National Forest. No cell service. Nearest town, 40 minutes by car, assuming you can find the road in the dark. The tower itself is a single room on wooden stilts, 50 feet up, surrounded on all sides by black pines that stretch for miles in every direction. David had worked for the Forestry Service for 10 years. He liked the quiet. He liked being alone. He'd done 4 solo postings before this one and never had a problem. He was the kind of person who found silence comfortable rather than threatening. The kind of person who could sit on that platform for hours watching weather systems roll in from the northwest, perfectly content with nothing but coffee and his own thoughts. When he arrived at Fire Lookout 42, the outgoing ranger, a man named Elias, was already at the bottom of the steps with his bag packed. He didn't say hello. He didn't do a handover briefing. He looked at David once, said, "Read the door," and walked away at a pace that wasn't quite running, but was as close as a grown man could get without breaking into one. David called after him. Elias didn't look back. David climbed the stairs, unpacked his gear, put on a pot of coffee. He looked around the small cabin room, logbook open on the desk, radio mounted on the wall, cot in the corner, a week's worth of supplies stacked neatly. Everything normal, everything routine. Then he turned around and saw the note pinned to the back of the door with a hunting knife. The handwriting was Elias's. He recognized it from the logbook. But unlike the logbook, which was neat, methodical, the handwriting of a careful professional, this looked like it had been written by someone whose hands wouldn't stop shaking. It was a list of rules. Rule 1. Keep the radio on channel 4. If you hear static, turn it off immediately. Do not listen to what's underneath it. Rule 2. Lock the trapdoor the moment the sun hits the tree line. Not when it gets dark. Not when you feel like it. The moment the sun touches the tops of the trees. Rule 3. If you see a figure in a yellow raincoat at the base of the tower, do not wave. Do not make eye contact. Close the blinds immediately and do not open them again until morning. Rule 4. If the tree line looks closer than it did yesterday, do not go down. David read it twice. He stood there for a long moment holding it. Then he folded it up, dropped it in the trash, and told himself that Elias had clearly had some kind of breakdown. It happened to people out here. The isolation got to them. He'd seen it before. He tuned the radio to channel 7, got his classic rock static, and went to sleep. The first 3 days were peaceful. Cold air, good sunsets. The kind of silence that city people pay a lot of money to experience for a weekend. David documented weather readings, scanned the tree lines for smoke, ate his meals, read his books. Normal. Night 4 changed everything. 2:17 a.m. He woke up and didn't know why. No sound, no dream he could remember. The cabin was dark. The fire in the small stove had died down. The radio was on channel 7. He was certain of it. He hadn't touched it. But it wasn't playing music anymore. Just static. Dense, layered static that felt somehow thick, like it had weight to it. And underneath it, if he turned the volume up just slightly, there was a sound, rhythmic, wet, heavy, like someone methodically striking something soft against a hard surface. Thump, thump, thump. He snapped the radio off. The silence that rushed back in felt different from the silence before, heavier, watched. Then a branch snapped somewhere below the tower, loud, deliberate, the kind of snap that means something with real weight behind it. David moved to the window. The forest below was dark, the tree line lit pale silver by a half moon. He scanned the perimeter slowly. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And then, yellow. 50 yards out, right at the edge of the tree line, a figure stood completely still. He could see it clearly in the moonlight. Tall, far too tall. 7 feet at minimum, with a proportional wrongness that his brain kept trying to correct and couldn't. It was wearing a bright yellow raincoat that caught the moonlight like a reflector vest. It was not moving at all, just standing, facing the tower. He stared at it. He knows he shouldn't have. He's said that every time he's told this story. He knows. The figure raised one arm, slowly, smoothly, and the arm was long and thin and bent at an angle that elbows simply do not bend, and it waved at him. Slow, patient, like it had been waiting for him to look. David yanked the blinds shut and sat on the floor with his back against the wall until sunrise. He didn't sleep. He didn't touch the radio. He heard nothing else. By morning, he'd almost convinced himself it had been a hiker, a very tall hiker, in a yellow raincoat, alone, in a national forest at 2 a.m, waving at a fire tower. He was good at talking himself out of things. Day 5. The radio was dead. Not static, just hollow silence, like a disconnected line. He couldn't raise base camp. He told himself the storm had knocked out a relay somewhere. He needed air. He needed to confirm his own sanity. So despite every instinct he was now developing, he climbed down the 50-foot ladder and walked the perimeter of the tower. He needed to see the ground. He needed to see footprints or the absence of them. No footprints, no campsite, no sign of anyone or anything. The forest was absolutely still. No birds, no wind, that specific suffocating silence that anyone who has spent real time in nature will tell you is deeply, fundamentally wrong. He turned to go back up and stopped. David had spent 5 days memorizing this view. He had looked at it from the platform every morning and every evening. He knew exactly how far the nearest cluster of pines sat from the base of the tower. He had measured it on day 1, 50 yards, give or take. They were 30 yards away. He ran, boots hitting frozen ground, hands finding the ladder, climbing faster than he'd ever climbed anything. Behind him, from somewhere inside the tree line, a sound started up. A woman's voice, crying, desperate. "Help me, please. My leg is broken. I can't move." 10 years of training pulled at him. Every instinct said, "Turn around. Someone is hurt." He made it halfway up the ladder before he stopped moving, because the voice was still crying. But it had changed. The pitch had dropped slightly, degraded, like a recording being played on damaged equipment. The same words, the same cadence, the same inflections, but wrong in a way he couldn't articulate and couldn't stop noticing. "Help me, please. My leg is broken. I can't move." He looked down. The yellow raincoat had stepped out from behind the nearest pine. Up close, the hood didn't contain a face in shadow. It contained nothing, a void where a face should have been. Its limbs moved in sequences that no human body moves in, like it was solving the problem of locomotion in real time. It covered 30 yards in what he estimated was about 2 seconds. David threw himself through the trapdoor and drove the bolt home just as something hit the underside with a force that shook the entire structure. The iron bolt buckled in its housing but held. Dust fell from the rafters. Then the voices started. "Help me," through the floorboards. Then Elias, "David, open the door. It's cold out here." Then a child laughing. Then his mother's voice, saying something specific, something private, something she had said to him exactly once when he was 11 years old and sick in a hospital, something that nobody else on earth could have known. He never told anyone what the words were. He said he still doesn't understand how it knew. It spent 8 hours working through voices, testing combinations, testing what would make him open the door. Nothing did. The relief team found him 3 days later. Severe dehydration, non-responsive. He was holding an empty flare gun. He had fired all 6 rounds through the floorboards at some point on day 6. He doesn't remember doing it. There was no evidence of anyone else in the area, no tracks, no campsite. The forensic team found nothing. What they did find was on the underside of the trapdoor. Deep, parallel gouges in solid oak, covering nearly the entire surface. The forensic analysis described them as consistent with human fingernails, consistent with, not identical to. David lives in the city now, has for 2 years. He doesn't go near forests. He doesn't own a radio. He has a therapist he sees twice a week who he describes as patient and non-judgmental, which he appreciates. He mentioned one last thing, almost as a footnote. From his apartment window on the 14th floor, he has a clear view of the city skyline. He has learned every building by sight. He knows their positions, their distances. He checks them the way another person might check that the stove is off. Last month, he said, he noticed one of them looked slightly closer than it had the day before. He has been checking every morning since. Stay safe out there. Lock your doors. And if you ever find a list of rules left by whoever came before you, read them. Follow them. Do not make the mistake of deciding they don't apply to you.